from the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight. We're going to talk quarterbacks right off the bat. Steve Atwater is going to join us a little later on to break down the draft class for the Broncos, but we learned that they're going to have a 50-50 split between Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock in training camp. Of course, assuming nothing else happens, say a certain number 12 out in Green Bay comes to Denver. But for now, we will table that conversation and stick with what we do know, and that is Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock are the principal players in this quarterback competition. And I guess the way that stacks up, and the biggest question that comes to mind for me is, what are we going to learn in training camp that is going to definitively tell us which guy is ahead of the other guy, in your opinion?
Well, you got to come out right out the gate, and you got to see who's got the better timing with the receivers, who understands the offense and the playbook, who's making the accurate throws and who's not turning it over. And I think those are the big four, specifically the last two. That's been the problem with Drew Lock, is inconsistency in turning it over. And if Drew Lock can show that consistency and not turn the football over, then I think he has the leg up, because Teddy Bridgewater doesn't have the tools that Drew has. But if Drew's unable to do it, Teddy's right there to be the safety net and be the safe guy.
But that's the tough thing about training camp. Sometimes turnovers aren't all created equal, right? Because sometimes those things are scripted. Sometimes it's a look that the defense is giving in order to challenge the offense, or vice versa.
Yeah, but you can tell after 2 weeks of throwing, like you can tell after 2 weeks worth of going back and forth with this stuff, which guy is the guy. And if they're close, then I would suggest that Drew Lock would have a leg up. If you can't decide between Teddy Bridgewater, who's the anti-Drew Lock in terms of what he brings to the table,
that's fair.
Then at that point that and so I think that's the way to view this. The lens to view this through is that everybody here is hoping Drew Lock takes the massive Josh Allen type leap and goes forward. But if he doesn't, we've got this other guy over here who plays the game like Alex Smith, hyper-conservative, super safe with the football, is not going to turn it over. You're going to make sure you get points out of every drive. Even if it's not a touchdown, you're at least going to get field goals, and that can be a step up from throwing an interception.
It sort of feels like a gut feel in some of this respect. Like what's the gut feel on what the team needs right now? Like, we had a conversation on the show about who actually gives you the best chance to win games right now. Mm-hmm. Because the fact is, you need a quarterback not turning the ball over, right? You talked about 11 games last year and how they were within one score. And the fact is, several of those games we can point to either drops from receivers or more specifically turnovers on the offensive side. So if you have a quarterback not turning the ball over, you're going to put yourself in games, especially as good as this defense is going to be. On the other side of that, of course, we all want the upside at the position. Mm-hmm. We all want the future franchise quarterback, and Drew Lock could potentially be that. Mm-hmm. And if he doesn't win this training camp job, I don't think he gets another chance.
I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. This is it. All the chips are on the table now, and Drew Lock knows that, and that's why he's been working with Peyton Manning this offseason and trying to get the mental portion of this game down, because he's got the physical tools. Now, the keys on Drew Lock are quite simple. You've got to be consistent. You can't turn the football over, and you got to stay healthy, and those are the three things that he hasn't particularly done. So he's going to have to prove that he can do those things to become the guy, and if not, well, George Payton has said, I'm familiar with Teddy Bridgewater. Pat Shurmur's familiar with Teddy Bridgewater, and he's a safe safety net here. If Drew Lock doesn't pan out, we got a guy who can at least guide the offense and get us points.
It seems like the preseason games are going to be massive this time around. They didn't have them last year. Mm-hmm. Then there wasn't a competition last year, and even if they would have had one, it would have been pretty clear that Drew Lock was ahead of Jeff Driscoll, even Brett Rippon, who actually was really ahead of Jeff Driscoll. But it seems like the preseason games are going to help sort this out a bit too.
I think so. I think you're going to get some action this year that will allow you to kind of get a better look, a more comprehensive look at these guys. The way John Elway set it up last year for Drew Lock was just for Drew to take the reins. There was never a challenge. And I think part of that is a reflection of how John Elway's early career went as a Denver Bronco. Because they drafted Tommy Maddox, brought him in, and John Elway recognized what that did to him early on and wanted to set Drew up in a different way. And maybe that was a good thing for Drew, maybe it wasn't. For John Elway, it was something that resonated with him. So he kind of stacked the deck a little bit and said, Drew's going to be the guy. We got some safety nets here who has some starts, but this is not going to be real competition. Well, now he's got real competition. And I think that Drew thrives on that. I think Drew is better when he's being pushed. So we'll see if he's able to make that leap. I don't know for sure if he's going to be able to, but we'll see if this competition pushes him.
It's a fascinating juxtaposition, though, because of what John Elway had been doing. He did the same thing with Case Keenum, no pressure, you're the guy, that type of thing. He's done that, but he's also done the other side where he has had in-camp competition. George Payton, we don't really know. Like, we have this one example of where he's kind of letting a lot of players and coaches, because again, Tom McMahon's another example of a guy we thought potentially could be on the move, but at least right now it looks like he's there. So it seems as though he, at least in this early part, is kind of letting everybody earn their job. He's letting everybody earn their place with this organization going forward. I kind of like it.
I do too, and I've always said that that's the way you need to go. Football needs to be the ultimate meritocracy. You've earned the job, you keep it, that kind of thing. And Pete Carroll does an excellent job of that up there in Seattle, and I'd like to see the Broncos adopt some of that. Yeah,
and that's a great example, and that's a very player-friendly atmosphere. Mm-hmm. We hear that all the time, and that's something that needs to happen here. One of the things I think is the first step towards that player-friendly atmosphere is the way he handled Justin Simmons and Shelby Harris's contract.
And it resonated with the locker room. In fact, you saw that if you watched the behind the scenes with George Paton. Shelby reiterated to George Paton how much that resonated with the locker room and keeping these veterans, getting them paid, and how these young guys say, hey, you know what? I'm not playing for my second contract somewhere else. I'm playing for it here in Denver.
Yeah, and coming back to Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock, the locker room portion of this is important because the guys generally, they know who's the better guy or who's going to give them a chance to win.
Those guys love Drew Lock. They've gone to battle with him before, but Teddy has a chance to ingratiate himself. He comes out and plays well, and that's really how it's going to be. The guys will know. You'll be able to tell, and you'll be able to tell on the field who's winning that thing by, which one of these guys get hyped up when that guy's out there.
All right. Very interesting. Be something to talk about throughout the course of the summer. When we come back, we're going to dive into draft grades. The myths, the pros, the cons, all of it. We'll get to it next.
Welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight. Here are Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
All right, welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight. Steve Atwater is going to join us in the next segment. But in this segment, I thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about draft grades. You and I kind of went round and round on the show the other night talking about draft grades and the pros and the cons of it. I take it more as for entertainment purposes only. Then what we're really referencing here is the draft grades that come out minutes, if not hours, after the draft is concluded. Certainly, there are limitations. There's no way you could actually know how any of these players are going to end up. And most of what you're judging off of, the people that are writing the draft grade article, are off their own biases, off their own boards, whatever it is. So I think we acknowledge all those limitations. You don't know what you don't know, and understanding that teams will value it way different. Every team thinks they hit all their players for the most part that they wanted. So that's my take on draft grades. I think they're fun. I actually think that they are a useful tool. But Ben, you, along with Andrew Mason and everybody else, seem to want to tell me why I'm wrong. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Well, I don't think there's anything useful about them. If you want to say that they're fun, I'm here for that. And they are fun and they're entertaining. You can go back and look at when the Packers had the Aaron Rodgers draft, for instance. Pete Prisco gave the Green Bay Packers a C- for drafting Aaron Rodgers and reaching, air quotes, on their second-round pick from Bethune-Cookman, Nick Collins, both of whom are going to be Packers Ring of Fame players when all's said and done. Nick Collins already is, but yes, Aaron Rodgers will be as well. And so it's it's one of those things where I just don't understand. Everybody's viewing it through the lens of what they perceive to be the team needs and what they perceive to be the grades on each of these players to begin with. And so I find these things to be like an exercise almost in narcissism. It's how well this team did, how much this team did what you wanted them to do, not really how well the team did or whatever else it may be. And looking at these things, people grade not necessarily on the players you got, but sometimes on the players you didn't get. And to me, that's not a grade. That's just putting a number on something because you're disappointed the team didn't do it. So I don't like these things. These guys haven't taken a snap. You have no frame of reference to which to judge how well they play within the system. You don't know how well these guys are going to be as NFL players. Guys we have graded high all the time, bust out in the NFL all the time. RG3 was done in a couple of years. I mean, yeah, he's hovered around as a backup, but I mean, in reality, Marcus Mariota, everybody had him as the number 2 player in that draft, and look where he is now. Jameis Winston, same thing. 2 quarterbacks that went 1 and 2. Neither one of them were with the team they drafted him just a few years later. So same thing with Jared Goff and Carson Wentz. So I think that the idea that you're going to be presumptive enough to give a grade to a team on something based on, 40% of the information, how much of that, you don't know their medicals, you don't know their personality.
Very true.
How many of these people actually know what they're looking at when they grade the tape? So, I find them superfluous.
Okay, that's fair. And the exercise in narcissism was a nice touch. I kind of liked that one. That's a new one you brought to the argument. I think that's good. And certainly there's some truth there. I'm not going to sit there and completely tell you that everything you said is false, but I also feel like we take some things too seriously. Like we take things like a draft grade by whatever, name your website, as it really means a lot on what the future of that draft player position or draft class is going to be. And in the end, it probably doesn't. And your point, though, that I do completely agree with in all this. We don't see eye to eye on the value of draft grades and where they sit. But the one part that I do completely agree with you on is the giving a team negative points based on what you thought they should have done. I feel like that gets a little out of reach, out of hand, because, for example, there are all the negative draft grades about the Broncos right now are because of Justin Fields.
Right.
If the Broncos would have drafted Justin Fields, if they would have pandered to all of the draft nicks out there and taken Justin Fields, A+ is across the board. But that's not what it's all about. So I think we have to have real conversations about the differences on, okay, you wanted this guy, they didn't take him. Grade the draft class they actually took, not so much on what they missed on.
Well, no, and I totally agree with that. But for me, I think that people tune into this kind of stuff for expertise. They want to know, sure, our expertise on this kind of stuff. So when you go to, draftdudes.com, and my apologies if that's a real website, draftdudes.com, and look at their grades on these kinds of things, is there really an expertise there? How many people are masquerading as experts on this, slapping a grade on something, and that is consumed, and then your average fan takes that, and then they come back to you or I, or somebody like Dave Logan, for instance, and they're like, well, they got a C-. They're a C- team in this draft, and they take that information as fact, when in fact it's really just some guy's opinion who may or may not even know what he's talking about.
But this is a tough conversation that's actually really a bigger conversation about just reading anything on the internet that is fact or can be taken as a version of fact and versus opinion. And we run into this all the time on the show. People will hit us with things like, well, I've heard this. And right. We remember coming into the draft, like people were saying, well, I've heard Drew Lock's going to get traded. And if they draft Justin Fields, it's only a matter of time. And it's like, well, hold on. None of that actually really exists. You just maybe read that somewhere.
Right.
So I guess it comes down to some of the consumer parsing out information and understanding what's entertainment. And that's why I look at these things as entertainment and what's actually fact. Giving a draft grade on a class that hasn't even taken the field can't be taken as fact, because that's a flawed logic.
And I think it's the nature of my frustration with the business, honestly. Like I probably would find it entertaining if I were a fan, but working in the business now, you see people coming at you on Twitter and they'll say things like, well, I've heard that. And I'm like, well, you didn't actually hear anything. You read it somewhere, and it's someone else's conjecture, and now you're telling it to me. And I'm like, it's not something that's really a real thing. And so I think that's where my frustration lies with these draft grades. A lot of times, like I said, it's all based. It's based on misinformation from people who don't know what they're talking about to begin with, and that's what bugs me. But if you like that sort of stuff, it's fun. And I'm happy to let you have your fun.
So maybe there just needs to be a disclaimer at the top for entertainment purposes only.
Right.
Strictly opinion.
Maybe it can even have Miss Cleo get some new work with.
Love that. All right. When we come back, Steve Atwater's going to tell us what he thinks about the Broncos draft class. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight. Here are Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
All right, welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight, joined in studio by the one and only Steve Atwater. What up, Steve?
What up, R. Edwards?
Hey, man.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you, too. Let's talk about this draft class. The Broncos take 10 players. I was wrong. Got on tape. I was wrong.
What else goes along with that?
Nothing. Just that's it.
Right.
The admission. No, you get 11 players, so you were
close.
But let's talk about the players. Overall, what did you think about the draft class?
I mean, I was extremely happy to see we got some really good players, good young players. Guys going to come in here. Guys, some guys are going to play. Some guys are going to provide some depth. There's going to be some good competition for our guys. I couldn't be more impressed with the job that George Payton and Vic Fangio and those guys, John Elway, they all did.
Pat Surtain, now you did a bunch of work on the DBs. We had you on Broncos Country Tonight to talk about the DBs. I like J.C. Horn the best. That was my favorite guy, but I thought Pat Surtain absolutely deserved to be in the conversation as one of the top guys off the board. He just profiles as a guy that is going to, I think, succeed early on, and he's just smooth, man. I don't know. What else did you see when you watched Pat Surtain?
Yeah, he's got the pedigree, man. His dad was an amazing player. He's an amazing player. He's got the right mindset, got the right mentality going into it. I just can't see anything taking this guy off track except for there's injuries. If he's healthy, he's going to be on the field. He's going to be making plays.
Yeah, and it's an interesting spot, too, because he doesn't have the pressure. I feel like this is a good thing. He doesn't have the pressure of, okay, well, you're coming in and you're a day one starter. He could be a day one starter, don't get me wrong. But, and again, how many DBs you have on the field, that type of thing. But I'm just saying, like, there's a little bit of the fact that, hey, you have other guys here. You've got a lot of talent in the secondary. It's not like he got drafted to a team with depleted talent in the secondary, and we're going to lean on this dude to make huge strides for the team right away. No,
you're right. And, many times, though, if a cornerback, especially a guy drafted as high as he did, if he comes in and plays well, hey, he could be in the starting spot come week one.
Agreed.
I've seen that happen time and time again. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that he could be one of the top two corners right as the season starts.
And he has the length to cover some of these tight ends. I know that's something that the Broncos have been looking for. I think every team is really looking for because of those mismatches. Let's get to Javonte Williams. Now, this is a guy that forced more missed tackles in college football than any other running back, and 19 rushing touchdowns. He profiles to fit what you want in Pat Shurmur's offense. What did you think about that pick?
Oh, I loved it. We had conversations before the draft about him, and he was my number 2 pick behind Najee Harris.
That's right.
It's crazy. Najee Harris went to the Steelers. He reminded me of Le'Veon Bell, so that was a good fit there. But, man, Javonte Williams, the speed that he has, the intensity that he runs with, he's a dominant player. That was a great pick, and especially to be able to get him, in the second round? Come on.
Well, and he's one of those guys, I thought about you too, because some of the highlights you watch of him, you have to make some decisions on whether you're going to tackle that guy.
Oh, yeah. And you come half-stepping, he's gonna make you look bad.
That's right. And even as a rookie. So, and again, you have Melvin Gordon here, but you got Melvin Gordon for 1 year, and this is a guy that he basically is your succession plan there. Like, if Melvin Gordon is only 1 more year here, this is your starter next year. That doesn't mean Melvin Gordon can't come back on some lower contract and maybe you still keep that 1-2 punch. But because a lot of teams want to do that anyways. But this guy can be a bell cow back.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a little early to talk about that just because you never know what's going to happen with the injuries and all that. But, to have 2 backs of that caliber, a Melvin Gordon and a Javonte Williams. And then, to have Mike Boone there, to have, we still got Royce Freeman on the roster. We got a very, very good. We got I don't want to say this too early, but we can have an elite running back room.
I like that. All right, let's get to the 3rd round picks here. Quinn Miners, D3 prospect out of Wisconsin Whitewater, and Baron Browning out of Ohio State University. And honestly, when we had been talking about throughout the pre-draft process, both guys, I did not think that they would be able to get them anywhere near where they got them. I thought if you wanted one or the other, you'd have to take them at 71. So for the fact the Broncos got both of those guys is significant, but there's going to be competition now at center.
Yeah, definitely. Quinn Miners, he's a guy that stood out at the Senior Bowl. I didn't know that much about him. I went back and did some research on him. Man, this guy, he's a beast.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the level of competition that he was playing at while he was in college was totally different. He was dominating 220-pound linemen. I think I could probably – no, I can't do that.
I have nothing to say about that, but yes.
The level of competition was definitely different. The thing that helped him the most was going to the Senior Bowl and showing the scouts, the GMs, showing everyone that – it's not only those small defensive linemen in D3. I could do this with guys who are first-round draft picks. And that got everybody's attention. It's like, man, this guy's for real. And just like he got a great work ethic, great personality. I think he's going to fit in great with Dalton Reisner and those guys in the locker room. It's just a really, really good pick. They're definitely going to provide some depth and some competition for Lloyd Cushenberry there at the center position, or maybe even one of the guys at the guards positions.
Before we get out of here, I got to talk to you about these 2 safeties, Caden Stearns and Jamar Johnson. Now, I am a huge Jamar Johnson fan. I thought he was a top 100 pick. I am shocked that he got all the way there in the 6th round, but we knew this was going to be a little bit of a weird deal this year. Teams were going to have value into day 3 because guys were going to slip. Maybe they didn't have a chance to get a full check on him. And they even acknowledged, the Broncos did, that this was just top of the board kind of guy. So the 2 safeties they took in the 6th round, which one has the best chance of doing something this year, again, assuming health and otherwise?
I think they both do. specifically special teams wise.
Okay.
They're going to, both of those guys are, give full effort. They're going to go down there and make a lot of tackles on special teams. But if Justin or Kareem gets hurt, or if these guys can cover really well in training camp, they can cover some of these tight ends, they'll have an opportunity to play a lot during the regular season as well. But if K-Jack and Justin are healthy, I think these are guys who will be seeing significant time in the future. But, what better situation to come into than one where you have, two great players, Pro Bowl caliber players who are kind of teaching you the ropes of the league.
Well, we said this for a while now, that this would be the year to add all of these defensive players, give them a year in the system, and just see which one pops, because that's the opportunity where you basically have starters at every position.
No, you're right. And, we got an extreme amount of depth, and I'm happy for that because of the injuries that we had last year during the season, some serious knee injuries. So, to have guys who can step in and play, that's going to be a huge help.
Thanks for coming to the studio, man. I
appreciate
you.
Appreciate you.
All right, for Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.
Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight. Tune in to Broncos TV every weeknight at 6:30, right here on KTVD Channel 20.